Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier. In a link presentation, I explained just how America got to be so involved in Cuba, ending with the question, why did Khrushchev decide to place strategic nuclear missiles in Cuba? Why the Soviet Union thought it would be worth the inevitable furore to place missiles so close to America? Well, this presentation sets out to try and answer that question, even if in doing so it actually gives a few possible answers. There won't be a single answer to the question because placing missiles in Cuba gave Khrushchev a number of options. He could argue that they were placed in order to defend Cuba in the wake of the Bay of Pigs invasion. After all, America had carried out military maneuvers since that invasion, Operation Quick Kick, practicing an invasion of Cuba involving 4,000 Marines, more than 70 ships, and 300 planes. However, nuclear missiles, other than perhaps battlefield or tactical weapons, weren't necessary to stop an American invasion, and certainly not the medium-range and intermediate-range missiles that were set to be placed in Cuba. But they could be used to test America. Would America back off, or would it stand firm? If it backed off, it would be a propaganda victory for the Soviet Union, as well as establishing a highly significant strategic advantage in America's backyard. It could give the Soviet Union first strike ability. Whilst if America struck first, it would be able to use its missiles in Cuba as well as its own ICBMs in order to strike back. And even if America discovered the missiles in Cuba, which in fact was inevitable at some point, and it came to a standoff between the two sides, Khrushchev could negotiate the removal of America's missiles in Turkey and Italy, more of which below in another slide. However, if America stood firm and the Soviet Union backed down, it would be a propaganda victory for America. Worse, it could escalate into a crisis in which neither side could back down, and that was a frightening scenario. In other words, it was a very risky game to play, given all the potential consequences. To properly understand the game Khrushchev was playing, we need to get a little technical about nuclear weapons. Not too technical, I couldn't cope, but a little. First of all, even as early in the game as 1962, and the chart on my slide is much more modern than that, there were a frightening number of different types of nuclear weapons. Atom bombs of various sizes, and hydrogen bombs, also of various sizes. And what is equally important, different launch and delivery systems. Bombs dropped by planes, missiles that could be launched from fixed sites, or else by transporters, or by submarines. Battlefield or tactical weapons, short-range missiles, medium-range missiles, intermediate or long-range missiles, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Short-range missiles can reach targets up to about 1,000 kilometers away. Medium-range missiles could reach targets about 3,000 kilometers away. Intermediate or long-range missiles about 6,000 kilometers away. And ICBMs, as the name suggests, can reach across continents. Another key factor, though, in our consideration is time. Short-range or medium-range missiles would reach their targets in no more than 10 minutes. Intermediate or long-range missiles in about 20 minutes, and ICBMs in about 30 to 35 minutes. Why this is important is the time it gives the other side to respond and fire back. The whole concept of MAD, mutually assured destruction, is that if one side fires its ICBMs, the other side has time to fire back. This is where the time factor comes into play, because the 5 minutes needed to launch an ICBM might not give enough time to retaliate if medium or intermediate range missiles are used. The enemy's launch has to be detected, communication made between the military and their political masters. A decision needs to be made, all before the 5-minute launch procedures. Now, if a medium or intermediate range missile attack can knock out the enemy's communication systems, or better still, their ICBM silos, and they only need 10 to 20 minutes to reach their targets, then an ICBM strike can be launched with a much reduced capacity for the other side to strike back. There will always be a strike back. Remember, both sides have submarines and planes, those planes permanently in flight, that could strike back, even if all the ICBMs were destroyed, which itself would be doubtful. That's why Soviet medium and intermediate range missiles in Cuba was a potential game changer. And back in 1962, Khrushchev was particularly riled by the fact that America had 15 Jupiter medium-range missiles positioned in Turkey, and another 30 in Italy. They also had 64 medium-range missiles in Britain. These could reach deep into Soviet territory, reaching cities such as Stalingrad, Leningrad and Moscow, as well as Soviet command posts and missile sites. Why shouldn't the Soviet Union have the same in Cuba? The Soviet Union was now a friend of Cuba, buying its sugar and providing it with necessities and with the means of defending itself. For that is what the world would be told if it found out about them. They were positioned in Cuba purely as a defensive measure, not as a balance to America's rockets in Turkey, Italy and Britain. 64 SS-4 and SS-5 missiles were to be positioned on 9 sites in northwest Cuba. So, the decision was made to send tactical short-range, medium-range and intermediate-range missiles to Cuba. Between July and October 1962, some 43,000 Soviet servicemen were deployed to build, operate and defend the sites with tanks and anti-aircraft missiles. The equipment arrived at night. The servicemen, dressed as holidaymakers, arrived on cruise ships. However, early in October, Soviet planes capable of carrying nuclear weapons, though not necessarily doing so, were observed on Cuban airfields. Then, on October the 14th, spy planes photographed what seemed to be launch pads for intermediate-range rockets. The sites were confirmed by American intelligence experts on October the 16th. President Khrushchev was putting medium-range and intermediate-range nuclear missiles on Cuba. What was more, the most developed site looked as if it would be ready in a matter of days. And spy planes reported that 20 Soviet ships were sailing towards Cuba, some carrying more missiles, intermediate range. The Cuban missile crisis had begun. So, you have both perspectives as to why Cuba, for a few weeks at least, became the most frightening episode in the whole of the Cold War. For now, though, it remains for me to thank you, as always, for listening. If you're getting close to your exams, let me point out ways I can help you. I have a series of videos called Key Factors on each of the specific topics that are, I hope, useful in directing your revision. I have revision ebooks on Amazon that are as comprehensive in nature as I think it's possible to be. And I may have tutorial spots available if you feel the need. I don't bite. Contact me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com and I'll try and free up slots for you. And don't worry about the cost. We can sort that out. The very best of luck, anyway. But that's it for me, for now. Cheers.